10, it tells us to learn not the way of the heathens. Heathens is the Strong's Concordance number 1471, and it is Goy, G-O-Y, 1471, Goy, nation, people, Gentile, a foreign nation, a Gentile, a troop, often used in the New Testament to refer to Gentiles or nations, similar to the Hebrew Goy. In the Old Testament, it is often used to describe non-Israelite nations referred to as Gentiles who gave us the Christmas tree. The Greco-Roman Europeans, which are the Gentiles, which are the heathens, which we were not to learn their customs. Chapter 10, verses 1 through 5. Look at the map yourself, family. The Gentiles, respectfully, are the Greco-Roman Europeans, which are the heathens, which are the Goy, which are the pagans, which are the nations that are standing outside of the covenant of Yahuwah Elohim. We were not to learn any of these heathenistic, Hellenistic, paganistic holidays which Yahuwah detests. He hates them. Shalom, shalom. Come on in, family. We're going to briefly deal with this so-called Christmas. Search as you may, nowhere in the entirety of the scriptures does it say the Messiah was born on what they call December 25th. You could ask Google, you can ask Siri, you can search in your scriptures all you want. There is no scriptural support for December 25th celebration. This is an ancient and pagan custom that is mentioned of in the scriptures, and Abba Yahuwah, whom the world ignorantly calls God, tells us not to partake in this pagan celebration. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 10, verses 1 through 5, it reads, "Hear the word which Yahuwah speaketh unto you, O house of Yisrael. Thus says Yahuwah, learn not the way of the heathen." The heathen, that is Strong's Concordance number 1471, Goy, Gentile, a nation of people standing outside of Yah's covenant. So, who is the nation of people standing outside of Yah's covenant? The Gentiles, according to Genesis chapter 10, verses 1 through 5, are none other than the Greco-Roman Europeans. That's where we get this custom from. Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. One cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as palm trees. They speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. In the book of Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 20, it says that the things that the Gentiles offer and sacrifice to, they do unto devils and not unto Yahuwah. The Most High, the creator of heaven above, the universe, and the earth, does not want his people partaking in any of these heathenistic customs. I have something I would like to share with you. Fair use. Pay attention. use.
Okay, this is David, who says, we have friends who do not celebrate Christmas because they say December 25th is really a pagan holiday. While I agree that Jesus may not have been born on December 25th, he certainly was born as described in the Bible. How do I respond to them?
Well, in a sense, tell them they're right. You see, the winter solstice a couple of days later was the shortest day of the year, and the pagans had something called Saturnalia. And it was a time of lawlessness because all the laws were suspended. And people, a bunch of singers actually wandered the streets naked singing. And then they had orgies, sexual orgies. It was a mass thing. Well, when the Catholic Church came along in Italy, the Romans and others didn't want to give up their holidays. So they said, okay, we'll Christianize it. And so they said, okay, we'll say the birth of Jesus was the 25th of December. And then there was a monk who began to add it up. You see, if you read in Luke, it says there's a census taken when Quirinius was governor and so forth and so on. And they could take those leaders and figure the exact time dating from the foundation of Rome. And that's when the dates were established. And so they get pretty close to the date. But to say it's the 25th, shepherds were out abiding in the field. It gets a little cold at night. I mean, were they out there in the middle of winter? You know, I don't know. I've been out there on the shepherd's field on Christmas Eve. It's very nice. But it's cold. And nevertheless, I mean, what was going on? So all this business about mistletoe, pagan. Christmas trees, pagan. Giving out gifts, pagan. Every bit of it is pagan. Every single bit of it is pagan. We've Christianized it all. And so that's good. And so
summer, the sun is as high in the northern sky as it's going to get. It's not going any further north than the first day of summer. It is directly overhead, as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to get. Each day, from the first day of summer, each day it moves imperceptibly. It moves 1 degree southward each day, going southward. When it hits the halfway point, it is now crossing over the equator at the halfway point, and now it is going to fall. And that's why we call it fall or autumn. Fall, because the sun is now falling. It's going. And consequently, it keeps moving until it hits the halfway point, which it crosses over the equator. Now it is the spring in the southern equator, and in the northern hemisphere, it is now fall, coming of winter. But as I said, in Rio and in Brazil, it is now spring, because it's going to go 3 more months until it hits the first day of winter. And the first day of winter, the sun is as low in the southern sky as it's going to get. And that's the first day of summer for Rio. That's why the birds and smart people with money fly south. If you got money, you go south, follow the sun, right? So consequently, the sun, which was doing just fine, it was really hot and doing great. And then when it reached the halfway point, the constellation that it hits every fall is the constellation of Scorpio. Scorpio is the constellation that begins autumn. And therefore, it's this kiss of death. The scorpion has kissed God's son, and now he's going to be led to his death in Capricorn. He's going to die. He is fallen. The great Son of God is fallen. And he's going to fall all the way down to the southern hemisphere until it hits the first day of winter, which is December 22nd. Yes. On December 22nd, the sun rises on the lowest latitude, on the lowest point in the southern sky. Now follow what I'm saying. The sun rises on the lowest degree on the 22nd. On the 23rd, the sun rises on the same identical degree. It's so perceptive The U.S. Navy has the instruments to tell you it did not move 1 degree south, it did not move 1 degree north. It's on the same identical degree. On the 24th, it rises, and it's still on the same identical degree. Therefore, the ancient Egyptians knew that, and they said God's son was dead for 3 days. But on the 4th day, which is December 25th, United States Navy devices will tell you that the sun moved 1 degree northward. 1 small degree northward. It's just enough because the ancient people said anything that was dead for 3 days and has just moved 1 degree northward is born again.
He was the sun god reborn, and he was born on the winter solstice. His birthday is recorded in our modern calendar as December 25th. This story goes throughout all the different pagan nations' beliefs. In Egypt, they worship Horus, child of Isis and Osiris. In ancient Persia, they celebrated the sun god reborn, Mithra, on December 25th. In ancient Greece, they celebrated Adonis, and Rome celebrated Apollo. That's what paganism is. These Gentile nations worship the same God within the same story, just with different names.
Matthew 6:7, and when you palau, or as they say pray, do not keep babbling like the what family? Pagans. For they think that they will be heard because of their many words. Look at the New Living Translation. When you palau, not pray, do not babble on and on as the Gentiles do. The Gentiles are the pagans, and the pagans are the heathens, and the heathens and pagans, respectfully, are the Greco-Roman Europeans. In the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 7, it says, use not vain repetition as the Gentiles do. That word Gentile is Strong's Greek Concordance number 1482. Look at it on the screen. What does it mean? Gentile, heathen, pagan. So the heathens, the pagans, and the Gentiles are one in the same. Look below in the bottom paragraph where it says usage. The term ethikonos is used in the New Testament to refer to those who are not a part, it's not Jewish, it's Hebrew community, often translated as Gentile or heathen, and carries a connotation of someone who is outside the covenant community of Israel. So the Gentiles were not originally a part of the covenant, and the Gentiles are the pagans, and the pagans are the heathens, which respectfully, with love, are the Greco-Roman Europeans, and we were not to learn their ways. All of the holidays are pagan, every one of them. And January 1st is not the New Year, is not New Year's.
Christmas is of the devil. Yeah. Because when you bother people's Christmas, Christmas is of the devil. Because when you bother people's Christmas, I ain't gonna lead people to Christ with a Christmas tree, you liar.
That's right.
Because I ain't gonna lead people to Christ with a Christmas tree, you liar. Christmas is a spell from hell.
Hey, Sheldon, are you and Leonard putting up a Christmas tree?
No, because we don't celebrate the ancient pagan festival of Saturnalia.
Saturnalia?
Gather round, kids. It's time for Sheldon's beloved Christmas special.
In the pre-Christian era, as the winter solstice approached and the plants died, pagans brought evergreen boughs into their homes as an act of sympathetic magic intended to guard the life essences of the plants until spring. This custom was later appropriated by Northern Europeans, and eventually it becomes the so-called Christmas tree.
Chapter 10, verse 18, behold, Israel after the flesh Are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? Verse 19. What say I then, that an idol, that Christmas tree, is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? Verse 20. But I say that the things that which the Gentiles sacrifice, we've already exposed who the Gentiles are, but I say the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not into Elohim. And I would not that ye, I'm speaking to you, family, the scriptures is speaking to you, Yahuwah is speaking to you, and I would not that ye, you family, should not have fellowship with what? Devils. Ye cannot drink the cup of Yahuwah and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of Yahuwah's table and of the table of devils. Do we provoke Yahuwah to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? All things are lawful, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful, but all things edify not. We are not to learn the ways of the heathens, because the things that they do, they sacrifice unto devils. Cannot partake of the table of demons and devils and partake of Yahuwah's table as well. The Father commands and instructs us not to partake in any of these Hellenistic pagan holidays. Come out from among them, my people. Christmas exposed.
Who would have thunk that people, even some of the kings of ancient Israel, were getting into the practice of offering their own children, burning them alive, immolating them down, playing the drums and jingling the bells so that you can't hear the cries of the children, as you mentioned.
The little drummer boy takes on a whole new context historically.
It's astonishing. Even the word Yule log, if you know that Yule in ancient Chaldean means child, it's really a reference to a child log. The child becomes the log, which becomes the flame. It's people were incinerating their own children, and
the promise of good fortune. Ancient Rome had its own December festivals. 1 week before the winter solstice, Romans began celebrating Saturnalia, an orgy of food and drink in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture. Some Romans, particularly soldiers and government officials, also worshipped Mithra, the sun god. It is believed that to this small but powerful sect, the birthday of Mithra, December 25th, was the holiest day of the year. By the 1st century AD, pagan traditions were being challenged as Christianity took hold throughout the empire. But Christ's birth date remained a mystery, since the Bible doesn't mention exactly when he was born. Since pagan Rome already celebrated the birth of Mithra on December 25th, it is theorized the Church adopted the date as the birth of the Christ child. In the 4th century, the Church made it official, declaring December 25th as the feast day of the Nativity.
In the hemisphere during late December, the days are at their shortest lengths and the nights are at their longest. For those of the pagan world, this has always been the greatest time of the year to celebrate and practice the works of darkness. The pagan calendar identifies this period as the winter solstice. It was during the pre-Christian midwinter pagan celebrations of Scandinavia's Norsemen where today's Christmas traditions began. As a means of honoring the pagan sex and fertility god Yule, a 12-day celebration during the month of December was inaugurated. A large single log considered to be a phallic idol was lit on fire and kept burning for 12 days. Animal or human sacrifices were offered in the fire on each of those days. Wild, delirious reveling accompanied the daily sacrifices as drunken participants defiantly strove to make contact with spirits. 1,000 miles away in pre-Christian Rome, celebrants were paying homage to their own gods during the winter solstice. Witchcraft traditions hold that a number of pagan gods were given birth during this period, including Dionysus, Attis, and Baal, chief male god of fertility and licentiousness. Another pagan god from Persia, identified as Mithra, was said to have been born specifically on December 25th. Mithra was the god of the unconquerable sun, the god of the light between heaven and earth, worshipped at that time by an influential Roman cult. His birth symbolized an end to the long nights and a return to the dominance of the sun. During the month-long winter solstice celebration, courts in Rome were closed. Any and all crimes were allowed. Homosexuality, cross-dressing, and uncontrolled debauchery reigned supreme. Rome's order was turned upside down. Even children were allowed to join in the drunken orgies as part of the Juvenalia celebration. By 270 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian had made it official, setting aside a 7-day period from December the 17th through the 24th, culminating in an exchange of gifts on December the 25th to celebrate the birth of the sun god. This Roman orgy to end all orgies later became known as Saturnalia, in honor of the god Saturn, the god of excess. Roman soldiers invading Britain brought with them their pagan orgiastic traditions. Upon taking root in England, Saturnalia became known as the Festival of Fools, reigned over by the Lord of Misrule. By the 4th century, the influential government-sanctioned Church of Rome, unable to outlaw the growing number of pagan practices, chose instead to adopt them into their so-called official Christianity. The Church believed this would attract more pagans to their fold.
Christmas tree is an Asherah pole, a sexual object with hidden symbols of male fertility. Look on the picture. The Christmas tree represents the male reproductive organ, and the wreath that the pagans hang on their door represents the female's reproductive organ. Christmas, the truth, is what matters, not pagan traditions of men, as it says in Galatians 4:16. Have I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Abba Yahuwah does not want us partaking of these Hellenistic holidays. He instructs us and warns us to come out from among them. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 33, he tells his moray, his teachers, his shepherds, to eat his word, which means to study his word. And then he says, go and warn my people from me. Thus says Yahuwah. Now that Christmas has been exposed, what will you do with this truth? Share it, I palau. Come out from among them. Elder O signing off. Until next time, like, share, and subscribe. Shalom. 135, verse 13. Thy name, O Yahuwah, endureth forever, and thy memorial, O Yahuwah, throughout all generations. For Yahuwah will judge his people, and he will repent himself concerning his servants. The idols of the heathen are silver and gold, the work of men's hand. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes they have, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Neither is there any breath in their mouths. They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them. We are not to partake in these days. If you don't repent of your evil doing and participation in these paganistic holidays, you will not make it into Shamaim or heaven. Repent. When you know better, you do better. Psalms 106 verse 34. They did not destroy the nations concerning whom Yahuwah commanded them. This was in the Ancient of Days, before they became strong and powerful with weapons of iron. This was before they became a mighty and increasing nation, before they ruled the world as they do now. the children of Israel were commanded back then to come against these people, but they did not. Verse 35, but were mingled among the heathen. The Israelites were mingled among the heathen and learned their works, these pagan holidays, and served their idols, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan, such as Moloch. They are doing it right now in plain sight, and the land was polluted with blood. Thus were they defiled with their own works, and went whoring with their own inventions. Therefore the wrath of Yahuwah was kindled against his people, insomuch that he abhorred his own inheritance. Abba Yahuwah is angry with his children for participating in these pagan holidays. You cannot make it into heaven participating in these pagan holidays. It is a spell that is put on you. This so-called feel good is witchcraft. It is magic done by the Amorites. Repent. Family, we could go on and on. In the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 1, going down to around about verse 40 or 43. Look at the heading here on verse 41. Installation of the what? The Gentile cults. Christianity and its pagan holidays is the largest cult on planet Earth. But because the majority of the people are doing it, they don't openly recognize their occultic practices. Israelite or Christianity is a cult. The king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. Isn't that what they teach here? And that all should give up their particular customs. All the nations accepted the command of the king. Many, even from Israel, the Israelites gladly adopted his religion, Christianity. They sacrificed to idols and profaned the Sabbath. Christians don't keep the Sabbath, they keep the first day. And the king sent letters by the messengers to Jerusalem and to the towns of Judah. And it says to profane the Sabbaths and the festivals, to defile the sanctuary and the holy ones, to build altars and sacrifice precincts and shrines for idols, to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animals, and to leave their sons uncircumcised. They were to make themselves abominable in everything unclean and profane, so that they would forget the law and change the ordinances. It's speaking of the law of Yahuwah. And he added, whoever does not obey the command of the king shall die. Let's skip down here. Let's see here. Where is it at? Verse 59, for the sake of time. Read this in this entire chapter in your spare time. Verse 59 is why we came here. On the 25th day of the month, they offered sacrifices on an altar that was on top of the altar of the burnt offering. According to the decree, they had put to death the women who had circumcised their children. Christmas is pagan. Chapter 6, verse 1. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Hebrews, not Jews, Hebrews, to depart from the laws of their fathers. The laws of what fathers? Abraham, Moses. And not to live after the laws of Yahuwah, not G-O-D, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter, Olympus, and that in Gazarim of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in that place, in the place. The coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with riot and revelings by the Gentiles, the Greco-Roman Europeans, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy place. And besides, that brought in things that were not lawful. The altar was filled with profane things which the law forbiddeth. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or ancient fast, or profess himself at all to be a Hebrew. And in the day of the king's birth every month, they were brought by bitter constraint to eat the sacrifices. And when the fast of Bacchus, do your research on Bacchus, was kept, the Jews or the Hebrews were compelled to go in possession of Bacchus carrying ivy. That's that mistletoe family, Christmas. Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighboring cities of the heathens by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Hebrews, that they shall observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrificing. And whosoever would not conform themselves to the manner of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then a man might see present misery. Christmas is of the devil. I could go on and on, but that's enough for now. Christmas Exposed. Like, share, and subscribe. Elder O signing out. Until next time, shalom.